Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Neil Shapiro, member of the class of 80, proud father of the class of 23. Here's my better half.
That's right. I'm Juju Chang. I am the other parent of our class of 23. I married Jumbo. It's true. That makes me Jumbo in law. I think it says a lot about my good taste and excellent discretion. We're thrilled to be with you here today.
We're both happy to be with you from our home in New York, but I know we all wish we were back on the Hill on a beautiful autumn day, being together, enjoying Parents' Weekend. But instead, we're going to pivot just like the university has, and over the next 2 hours, try to bring you an exciting virtual version of Parents and Family Weekend.
But let's be honest, sending a kid off to college, whether it's your first kid or your fifth kid, or whether they're a freshman or a senior, it is deeply emotional. It is thrilling, but nerve-wracking this year, probably more than any other year before. So I'm glad you tuned in because like us, I'm sure you're looking for information because if your son's like ours, he's not very communicative. So we're trying to get a little information, a little reassurance today. Some of the segments that you're about to see have been pre-recorded in advance, but at the end of the program, we're going to have several Tufts staff members, faculty, to talk about your questions and your concerns.
Before we begin, we thought we'd get a sense of where you are, so we're going to take a poll. So tell us if you can. Check it on your screen, and you'll see the question. Are you joining us from the Eastern, Central, Mountain Pacific, or International time zone? And now we want to welcome Tufts 13th President, Dr. Tony Monaco. He's going to kick off the program live from campus. Tony, I know we all wish we were together with you in Cohen, but instead we're with you virtually in your Zoom room.
Thank you, Juju and Neil, for your warm introduction and for all you do for Tufts, including hosting this special program today. To the more than 2,000 parents and family members watching, welcome and thank you for joining us. I see that we have viewers from as far away as Zurich, Istanbul, and Beijing, and as close as a few streets away here in Medford and everywhere in between. I would typically be welcoming you from the stage of Cohen Auditorium today, feeling the excitement and elation of parents reconnecting with their jumbos. But unfortunately, that isn't the case this year. Today's program will give you a glimpse of what it's like on and off campus during this extraordinary time for our students, faculty, and staff. You will hear from our provosts and deans, an experience and insightful conversation with notable faculty from our Department of Political Science, learn about what is going on outside the classroom, and participate in a Q&A session with members of our Office of Residential Life and Learning, Health and Wellness, Undergraduate Advising, and Career Center. I am so proud of the leadership and resilience which our jumbos have demonstrated through this pandemic. From volunteering in local communities and opening up our campus to first responders, medical personnel, and even COVID-positive patients during the surge last spring, to helping inform our reopening plans and staying flexible as the pandemic has forced us to adjust and then readjust our plans, to finding creative ways to build community and extracurricular life during this very unique time. But most importantly, their commitment to keeping our campus community healthy and safe by adhering to the protocols and guidelines. Our current 7-day test positivity is 0.03%, tenfold lower than our local cities of Somerville and Medford, and almost 50 times lower than the state 7-day average of 1.4%. We are extending our testing coverage to our community residents and also assisting in the opening of our K-12 local schools. Our students have been key to the success this fall. They have been exemplary and set a very high standard for their peers. As a parent of college students myself, I know that this has also been a challenging semester for you too. And I want to thank you for your continued support and understanding. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to welcoming you back to campus when it's safe for us to do that together once again. Enjoy the program.
Hello, my name is Laith Siddiq, and I'm the director of the Tufts Arab Music Ensemble.
My name is Sophia.
My name is John Casey. I'm the Associate Athletic Director and Head Baseball Coach.
Hey everyone, Gina DeSalvo here.
Hi, my name is Don Megerly. I'm the coach of the Tufts Marathon team at Tufts University.
Hey there, I'm Chelsea Jordan, the Assistant Director for Campus Life.
I'm Rabbi Naftali Bauer, the Executive Director at Tufts Hillel.
Xavier Brooks here, running back from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
After 14 years of being an employee here, I've never been prouder to be a part of the Jumbo family.
As an ensemble director, the idea of holding classes remotely was a bit worrisome at first, because music really thrives when a community of people come together to rehearse and make music in the same space. But nevertheless, the Tufts Music Department was really supportive in helping us find ways to adapt and keep the classes engaging and resourceful.
I'm really happy about the studios that they have provided us with this semester to make sure that we get our work done and still have that studio experience and be in this location.
So we had, of the 49 runners on the team, 35 signed up for the virtual marathon, and the amazing results, and not only did they complete it, but there was some rather courageous runs taking place.
We have hired some amazing students this semester. This is such a big adjustment for everyone, and the students' word was to adjust to everything right away. The students I've encountered always talk about how much they love the food here at Carmichael, but most importantly, they always express their appreciation for the dining staff and all their hard work and efforts to make sure they're being fed in the safest way possible every day.
One thing that our office is doing to help ensure that our students are still having a great experience this fall is operating some new software platforms. Jumbo Life is a student engagement platform. It is a one-stop shop for all things getting students engaged on campus and making sure that they're connecting with fellow Jumbos.
Basically with everything going on in the world, everything has been a bit different, if not a lot different. So being able to come back out here and at least having a reduced football practice has really been good for guys' mental health, overall just happiness.
One of the beautiful things that we have done, or the most challenging but at least at this moment more rewarding for me, is to convert our classroom into the digital platform. All the virtual learning, it has teaching me a lot, made me feel more proud of my class and see how as a community with this bigger challenges we can be closer with each other.
I am working at the SMFA campus, and they've done quite a bit to make the students a welcoming experience here. They've added new studios to all the areas so students can have their own private studio and do their own work while still getting their education here at Tufts.
I'm a part of the Middle East Research Group with the Institute for Global Leadership, and I had the opportunity to moderate a panel with two authors of a new book about Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia. We were still able to have this event, and I, as a student, was able to engage and learn and benefit from that experience, as well as having a great variety of students and onlookers from many geographic areas in the audience.
As you can see, the biggest change in the fitness center this year is we've got barriers in place. This is allowing our students to take their masks off if they need it, and they can actually work out with the masks off and then put them right back on before they go about the rest of their daily activities.
I'm really happy that Hillel is still open as a space that people can come and work in a safe way, so it's nice to be able to get a change of scenery.
I'm very proud to say our coaches have stepped up to assist the university's case managers. Case managers support all of our students who wind up in quarantine or isolation due to the COVID-19 virus. But most importantly, our case managers are there to help the students understand someone here cares, and we're here to support all their needs.
Things are different this year, but that is only meant that our student leaders have upped the ante. They've been incredibly creative and innovative, and we are open for business.
It's so lovely to get glimpses of student life at the gym, for example. And thanks to Tony for all of that impressive and encouraging information on COVID.
And now something I've always wanted to say, let's go to the polls. We've asked you before where you were joining us from. As you can see, a huge lead in the East, but nice to see people represented from all across the country, indeed all across the world. Juju?
see that a good percentage are from the East Coast, but so many from all over the place. We're going to turn now to meet some of the senior academic leadership who are helping our students on campus. First, we want to welcome some of the leaders who are helping guide the faculty and staff who work with our students each and every day.
And we're going to welcome Provost and Senior Vice
Thank you so
President
much,
Nadine
Neil
Ar-
and Juju. Welcome to all of you parents and families of our amazing students. I'm Nadine Arbery, Provost and Senior Vice President of Tufts University. First, warmest congratulations to all of you, whether your child is a new student or a continuing student at Tufts, and sincere thanks to all of you for your support and sacrifices over the years. Without you, parents and family members, your loved ones would not be part of Tufts today. But under the challenging circumstances of our fall reopening, I also want to thank you for your trust in us in this difficult time for Tufts, the country, and the world. As Provost, I work to ensure that our educational and research programs are of the highest quality, and our students are a large part of this mission. At Tufts, we never forget that students are the reason we are all here. I know your child experience this year won't be very different, but I also want to reassure you that the Tufts community of faculty, staff, administrators, alumni, and fellow students all share a dedication to excellence and a passion for all our students' academic and personal development. I have no doubt that the Tufts experience will continue to be inspiring, challenging, and enlightening over the course of the year. Like at many other institutions, our students are expected to acquire and master knowledge. But here at Tufts, students are also active citizens who have many opportunities to think critically, analyze, create, solve, and innovate toward a better world. Yes, they attend classes, but they also immerse themselves in civic engagement through our unique Tisch College, conduct research with our world-renowned faculty, bring ideas to reality through innovation and entrepreneurship at Tufts Gordon Institute, or take advantage of our interdisciplinary offerings in the humanities and the arts, as well as the sciences and engineering. Whichever form this takes, students at Tufts are well equipped with the knowledge and skills needed to solve the grand challenges the world faces. Please be patient as we together navigate this challenging time while offering our students an exceptional education, a Tufts education. Welcome again to our virtual Parents and Families program. It's now my pleasure to introduce our deans who are with us today, starting with Dean James Glaser, Dean of Arts and Sciences. Jim.
Thank you, Nadine. I'm Jim Glaser. I'm the Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences. I'm a professor of political science, and I'm the proud father of 2 Tufts alums, both with liberal arts degrees and both out in the world doing really well. I'm really proud of them. I've been the dean here, the Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences for 6 years. I've been a dean for 18 years, and I've been a professor for 30 years. And I continue to teach. I'm teaching this semester. I'm teaching the Introductory American Politics course right now. And it continues to bring me great joy. And also makes it so that I'm doing the same thing that my faculty are doing. As Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences, I have 26 different departments, academic departments, and 10 interdisciplinary programs that are part of the school. And together with Dean Q, I'm responsible for all the units that serve your students. Student services, admissions, the library, student affairs, financial aid, career services, health services, and more. It's a great job. I am so proud to be part of Tufts. I've been able to grow my career here in a way that I never imagined possible. And I feel very, very lucky to be sitting in the seat that I'm in. Here we are at the beginning of the school year, the academic year, and I'm very, very excited about what's to come. As a university, you're only as good as your people. And we spend a full year recruiting and hiring new faculty, recruiting and bringing to campus new students. And I'm very, very excited to have them join the community and to see what they're going to bring to us. In arts and sciences, we've made big investments this year in areas such as cognitive and brain science, environmental studies, data science, the School of the Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts, and race, colonialism, and diaspora. The new faculty that we've hired, the new graduate students who are here, and of course the new undergraduates will make this a better place. We're also looking forward to watching the Cummings Building come to life. It will house our math department, our economics department, and our computer science department. It will be a great place for students to learn and a great place for faculty to gather and to learn from each other. I'm very, very excited to watch it go up, and those of you who are on campus should take a look as it develops. Jen-Min, to you.
Thank you, Dean Glaser. I am Jen-Min Q, Dean of the School of Engineering and the Carroll Family Professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. I'm so glad that you can join us today. I have been the engineering dean at Tufts for 5 years now, and I have enjoyed every minute of my time here. It is no exaggeration that there has not been a single morning that I do not wake up and look forward to coming to campus. Well, the last 6 months, my commute to work has mainly consisted of walking 2 flights of downstairs to my home office in the basement. No doubt that the pandemic has altered the life of millions. It also tested the ingenuity and resilience of our humanity. I am especially impressed with how our students, faculty, and staff have stepped up with enthusiasm and determination to offer their time and talents to help others in times of a crisis. When the pandemic struck the US back in March, our engineering community immediately mobilized. Relying on their engineering expertise, our students quickly developed an efficient technique to repair more than 6,000 face masks for the Tufts Medical Center, which was a big deal in the early days when PPE was in severe short supply. Using the 3D printers in our NoLab makerspace, another group of students developed an ingenious face mask filter to meet the unique needs of the anesthesiologists at the Stanford Medical School. Working with the local government, our faculty developed a low-cost and easy-to-use body temperature monitoring system for senior citizens living alone in our neighborhood cities of Medford and Somerville. These are just some of the examples of how our students and faculty responded to the pandemic crisis. I am so proud of them. This year, I again look forward to seeing and supporting all the ways in which our students continue to grow, change, and help our community. Throughout this past summer, our dedicated faculty and staff have worked around the clock to plan and prepare for the fall semester. We understand the tremendous challenges ahead of us, but we are committed to providing the educational experience that our students, your children, deserve. I am confident that together we will prevail. Your support, advocacy, and participation are vital to the success of our efforts. On behalf of the entire Jumbo community, thank you for all that you do for Tufts. Enjoy the rest of the program. I look forward to seeing you in person on our beautiful campus in the near future. In the meantime, I hope you and your family stay safe and well. Thank you. Now I turn to Dean Nancy Bauer.
Thanks so much, John Min. Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy Bauer, and I am going to talk to you a little bit about the 4 roles that I play at Tufts. For over 20 years, I've been a professor in the philosophy department and taught many students, and I'm very familiar with the school for that reason. I've also been a dean in the School of Arts and Sciences, working with Jim Glaser for the last 8 years. And for my 3rd role, I'm actually the mom of 4 kids, 3 of whom recently graduated from Tufts. And boy, did that give me a different picture of how things go. That's been really, really valuable to me as a dean. And finally, I'm very proud to be the dean of the School of the Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts University, our newest school. I'm extremely excited in particular about the plan that we came up with for our students this term. Art students often need to be very physically close to their instructors when they are learning how to do intricate things with the materials they're using. And so we decided to sort of really do something radical this term, which was to have all of our courses online so that they could see exactly what their instructors are doing, while at the same time using every space we have in all of the 4 buildings on our Medford and Fenway campuses to erect personal studios for all of our students in all of our programs. And it's wonderful to see how excited students have been about that and how they're taking advantage of that opportunity. We also gave a box of supplies curated to each of our students so that they could not have to worry at all about finding the right video camera or the right software or the right pastels or the right sculpture materials. And we're extremely proud of our students and how they've been responding to the challenges that this semester has faced. Thanks, and I'm now very happy to turn things over to my colleague, Alan Solomont, the Dean of the Tisch College of Civic Life.
Thank you, Nancy. So when people ask me how long I've been at Tufts University, I tell them more than 50 years. See, I graduated from Tufts in 1970. I've also been a member of the Board of Trustees, a visiting instructor, and most important, a parent of a daughter who was class of 2008. But today I am the Dean of the Jonathan M. Tisch College of Civic Life. Tisch College is the only university-wide college of its kind. And our mission is to influence the education of every student at Tufts, regardless of their field of study or their career path, so that they acquire the skills, the knowledge, and the values to be active citizens and to contribute to their communities, the nation, and the world. We provide a range of academic, experiential, and non-academic learning experiences. And despite the unusual and frankly difficult circumstances that we find ourselves in, all of us at Tisch College are excited about enriching your students' educational and civic experiences during this fall semester. First, we have an extraordinary lineup of speakers coming to campus this semester, all virtually, of course. We've already hosted the likes of Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Van Jones, and PBS White House correspondent Yamiche Elsindor, and we're looking forward to hearing from Congressman Adam Schiff, Professor Robert Putnam, Tufts alumnus Hank Azaria, and many more public figures and civic leaders. All of these events are offered virtually, and they're free to the entire Tufts community, including parents. So if you are interested, please go to our website, tischcollege.tufts.edu, and register. Because this is such an important election year, several of our speakers will focus on the 2020 elections. And Tisch College is pleased to support Jumbo Vote, a student-run effort to ensure that all students have safe and clear access to voting. Please remind your students to consult jumbovote.org for information about voting here in Medford or Somerville or back home. And finally, we are offering for the first time a freshman course on pathways to civic engagement. And your students can now major in civic studies. As far as we know, we're the only school that offers that kind of a major. We're really excited to work with your students and to help each of them plan for themselves a rich and productive civic life at Tufts and beyond. I hope when the situation changes and you're able to visit your students on campus, you'll come by and visit us in Barnum Hall. That's the building with the big elephant in front. We look forward to working with your students and to meeting as many of you as we can. And now I'll turn it back to Provost Aubrey.
Thank you very much, Dean Solomon. You have heard from our own perspective, but we would now like you to hear directly from our students to get a glance at what the campus looks like today. There is nothing better than seeing Tufts through our students' eyes. Let's take a look.
Good morning, everyone. It is another beautiful day, and I am currently walking to Hotong Cafe, where I go most mornings, and I get my coffee and a little breakfast.
Good morning. I'm out here on my porch having breakfast today because it's so nice out, and I'm trying to cling to the last bits of summer before it gets chilly.
Hey guys, so I made it to the Preslon. This is my friend Kiara. We're about to have socially distanced breakfast. It's beautiful, and we also happen to realize that there's a massive dog convention over there.
Hi, so right now I'm sitting in my backyard, as you can see, while the warm weather still lasts, and I'm about to have a meeting. Oh, my dog came to have a meeting with me.
Biology and sociology major.
I'm a freshman and I'm undecided for my major.
I'm a senior this year and I'm majoring in geology and minoring in math.
And I am currently a senior at Tufts studying computer science and human factors engineering.
It's a wonderful and beautiful field, and I'm super excited to go into public health just as much as I'm excited to go into medicine.
I'm doing Intro to International Relations and Intro to Environmental Studies, as well as Spanish 4 and English 1.
And I'm really excited to show you a little bit about what it's like to be at Tufts this semester.
Alright, now I'm going to get tested.
I can't take the physical camera into the testing site, but I can show you guys all the area leading up to it. It's right next to Harleston Hall, so it's behind me.
This semester, every Tufts student gets a COVID test about every 3 days. And then once we get the label, we do a self-administered nasal swab test, and then we put it in a little tube, and then put it in a box, and we leave the building, and the whole process takes about 2 minutes. It's so fast.
Right now I'm in Comp 170, and that is a specialized class that you take a little bit down the line after Comp 11 and Comp 15. It's super fun. It's called Computational Theory.
Hey guys, so I'm about to walk into my first class of the day. This is Jan and Carolyn. Thank you. So you can take a wipe and wipe. Here, I'll sit right behind you. These are marked. I feel bad because I'm whispering. So all these are marked so that you can sit and wipe them down. And then there's also asynchronous, so people are on Zoom.
Alright, I found this spot to do my English class. It's nice and quiet. This is the benefit of having online classes. You can take some outside, enjoy the outdoors.
Okay, so I just finished my stats class, and it's a pretty long class, but it went really well. We broke out into breakout rooms to work on assignments and problem sets together, which is a lot easier than being in one big group on Zoom and trying to learn math and work on problems. So that was really great, and professors in general have been doing a really good job at adapting to virtual classes.
I'm headed to the gym this morning. This is my first time going. There are time slots reserved for students from 8 a.m. on, and I believe faculty it's before students, so 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And you can actually take off your mask once you're in here. I will probably do that in a second, but yeah, so this is it.
Alright everyone, just had a super productive about 2-hour study session. Now I'm about to go on this run. I'll take you along with me.
All right, we made it. We made it to the path. All right, just grab my blanket and I'm gonna go for a picnic with some new people that I haven't met yet. I'm excited.
I'm really excited about being on campus right now.
Why are you excited about being on campus?
Because even though we have to social distance. Here on the Pres Lawn, which is one of my favorite spots on campus to come hang out with friends. It's this huge, beautiful green space, and so many people come here to eat lunch, eat dinner, work on homework, to hammock, read, relax.
I think that Tufts has done a wonderful job of supporting their students on financial aid. The COVID hardship fund was also really helpful, and I'm speaking for myself and others that needed it. I'm proud to say that I'm a jumbo and that I will be graduating class of 2021 as a jumbo. And out into the world I will go soon, and I'm glad for what Tufts has given me and how Tufts has prepared me. So thank you guys for taking the time to listen to all of this and to see what my life really is like on a day-to-day during COVID. I'm sorry that you couldn't have seen it in a more normal time, but I hope that you can see that we're all chugging along and we've got support, we've got love, we've got friends, we've got safety. So thanks so much, guys.
The classic unmute yourself dilemma. Sorry. Neil and I both work in television, and that felt like an observational doc or an obs doc. I learned more in that little clip about a day in the life of a Tufts student than I have after weeks of interrogating our son. So I'm super grateful to Michaela and Julie and Emma for a glimpse into your lives, and also Michaela is from studying from home. And we're glad to see that you and your classmates are doing everything they can to sort of get the most out of being at Tufts. Neil?
So now another question for you. We're going to go to the polls. You're going to see a poll on the bottom of your screen. And the question we want to know is, what year is your jumbo? First year, sophomore, junior, senior, multiple jumbos at Tufts. And no matter what the answer is, I think we just want to take this moment to thank everybody from being a part of this, for joining us, whether you're a first year family or you have families from across all 4 years.
And now we get the joy of welcoming our keynote discussion for the afternoon. As we all know, there is an incredibly consequential election coming up in just 2 weeks from this Tuesday. This discussion is going to be hosted by Dean Jim Glaser, who you met earlier and who told us about himself, along with several of the faculty from our Department of Political Science who got together a few weeks ago to discuss the election coming up in 2 weeks from Tuesday and to get their perspective as political scientists. So here we go. Dean Glaser, take it away.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Juju. Welcome, everybody. Instead of a keynote address at this year's Family Weekend, we've put together a panel discussion on the 2020 elections. We are taking advantage of the fact that Tufts has a powerhouse group of political scientists who work on American politics and political behavior. I'm Jim Glaser. I'm the Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences. I am a professor of political science and an Americanist, someone who studies American politics and political behavior. And I'm joined here by 4 of my colleagues. Jeff Berry is the John Richard Skews class of 1941 professor of political science. I might be the dean, but he's the dean of the political scientists. Jeff, would you introduce yourself and describe your scholarship for us?
Sure, thanks, Jim. I teach American politics in the department, including the course on the presidency, and most of my recent research has been on the media, particularly cable television, Fox and MSNBC, and how they cover politics.
Eitan Hirsch is Associate Professor of Political Science and a Tufts alum. Eitan?
Hi there. I teach classes on U.S. elections this semester, focus on election law, and a class on information technology and politics. My research is about elections, voting rights, and civic engagement in American politics.
Great. Brian Schaffner is the Newhouse Professor of Civic Studies. Brian?
Hey, great to be here. This semester I'm teaching a class on polling the 2020 election, where me and the students run a poll on the election together. So the election is definitely in our minds. I'm also teaching a class on Intro to Civic Studies, and my research is basically focuses on sort of voting behavior, why people vote the way they do, why they think about elections the way they do.
Excellent. And Debbie Schiltcrout is Professor of Political Science and Chair of the Department of Political Science. Debbie?
Hi, thanks, Jim. I'm also a Tufts alum, and I do research on public opinion in a variety of areas, mainly related to race, ethnicity, immigration, and American national identity. And this semester, I'm teaching a course on political psychology.
Great, thank you. I would note that both Debbie and Eitan were students of mine and of Jeff's when they were undergraduates at Tufts. Two of actually many who've gone into the profession. Among the five of us, we've written 19 books published by some of the most prestigious university presses in the country. We have articles in some of the premier journals in the discipline. And Jeff Barry might be the political scientist who is most quoted by journalists in all of New England. I drive home frequently and hear him on NPR all the time. So let's dive right in. And Jeff, I'm going to start with you. Given how much you interact with journalists, I'm curious to know what you think as to the question of whether political scientists look at the election differently than journalists, and what can political scientists tell us about this campaign?
Right, so political scientists and journalists do look at elections very differently. Political scientists look at the underlying fundamentals of elections. We look at long-term trends. We try to understand what the relationship is between the state of the economy and the vote, presidential popularity. Journalists tend to look at campaigns and this happened today and that happened today. What are the implications of Trump saying this or Biden saying that? Political scientists don't put a lot of stock in that because we assume, and I think correctly, that most people aren't paying that much attention to the day-to-day dynamics of a campaign. Rather, instead, we actually aim toward a broader understanding using quantitative means to actually predict elections, and so that we can come up with models that tell us whether the incumbent party is going to win or not.
To look at the campaign right now, one of the very interesting things about this cycle is that the presidential election polls have been so steady. Very little has changed since Joe Biden emerged as the Democratic nominee. So my question is, why do you think this is? And does this suggest that the campaign that we're experiencing right now doesn't matter?
Well, I guess I'll jump in. Or Debbie, you want to go?
Yeah, you go first, Brian, then I'll go.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a factor of a couple of things. So like one is, of course, that I think we all know that politics in the US has become much more polarized along partisan lines in the last 10 or 20 years. So a lot of people just are not sort of up for grabs. They're not going to change their minds. They've kind of locked in their vote, not even months ahead of time, but maybe even years ahead of time. So I think there's many fewer swing voters, which is part of the reason why we see very steady polls. I also think we have an election that's basically just about Trump. So people already have very, very strong opinions on Trump, one way or the other. And I think, you know, part of what you see with the stability in this election is also what we saw, you know, during impeachment or during all the number of other scandals that happened during the first 3.5 years of Trump's term, which is people would always expect, okay, this is going to be the thing that sinks him. This is going to be the thing that sinks him. And nothing really sank his approval ratings. They basically just hovered around 40, 43% the whole time. And so it's not necessarily much of a surprise that now things that happened during the campaign also don't really matter much. People are kind of locked in for the most part. They either don't like Trump or they like Trump. And there's just not that many people who don't have an idea of which way they want to vote this year.
Debbie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and in adding to that, I also want to say a little bit about the first question you proposed to Jeff, which is, in addition to everything that Brian just said, when people watch political news on TV, not only are they hearing journalists, they're also hearing a lot of pundits. And so what they would hear from political scientists differs from that in one important way, I think, is that we are much more comfortable with uncertainty than they are. And so when you hear a lot of political news, you hear a lot of certainty about how what happened today is going to lead to this particular consequence. And so your question about Trump and why attitudes about him are so stable and nothing really seems to matter. There are certainly the factors that Brian suggested, some of which are unique to Trump, some of which are about changes in parties over the years. And I think the truth is we don't really know whether this is a feature of American politics now or whether this, after Trump, will revert back to normal, where certain things that happen day to day might actually seem to move public opinion in a way they haven't been at this time. I think political scientists would be much more likely to tell you that we don't know the answer to that yet than a lot of what you see from journalists and pundits on TV.
Back in the summer of 2019, the five of us went to Fenway Park to watch a Red Sox game, and we critiqued the various candidates. Now it's actually very interesting to look back on that conversation and to note who was correct in their prediction of who would emerge from that contest. Brian, thinking back to your comment about this really is an election about Donald Trump, does lead me to think about the question about whether Joe Biden that it really matters that it's Joe Biden, or would it have been different if Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or Mayor Pete, who visited Tufts last month, was the candidate? Does it really matter who is in that Democratic spot? Do you think Joe Biden was the best candidate for the Democrats to nominate from an electoral perspective? Could the contest have been different if one of the others had emerged?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, obviously we'll never know for sure. I think we had polling coming out in 2019 that suggested that Biden was the strongest candidate. So when you matched up Trump against Biden versus doing it against Warren, doing it against Sanders, Biden generally came out the best, especially in those sort of Midwestern swing states that I think we all knew were going to be critical in this election. So from that perspective, if you look at sort of the polling on this, you'd say, yeah, Biden was the right candidate. I think one of the things that I think is like really interesting about Biden is there's this old joke where Democrats talk about the fact that generic Democrat in a poll always does really well, and how come none of their actual candidates ever do as well as generic Democrat. And if ever you were going to nominate generic Democrat, I think it was Joe Biden. He's just sort of like most people, I think, have a hard time working up really strong feelings about him on either side. And I think that probably does help him a bit with some of the some voters who I think in 2016 did not like Trump, but also really did not like Clinton, and therefore found it easier to vote for Trump.
Biden is the candidate the Republicans least wanted to run against. Remember that the phone call to the Prime Minister of the Ukraine was to find dirt on Biden. They wanted to run against Elizabeth Warren, and they didn't get what they wanted.
I would just add that, a lot of the fight during the primary about this on the Democratic side was between basically whether you want to have a mobilization strategy, which gets people excited about a candidate with stronger progressive positions, or a persuasion strategy where you go to the middle. I think we are seeing, similar to what Brian had said, Biden doesn't get that many people excited. I just polled my US elections class. I had 55 students. Almost none of them are engaging in any kind of volunteerism for Biden, which is very different than, say, during the Obama years. I actually just gave a talk this morning to a student group at another university I won't name, but basically at that university, the Student Democratic Club is essentially protesting. I mean, we know across the whole country, students and people who generally fill volunteer roles on the younger side voted overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders, and they probably are not going to be very involved for Biden because they don't like him. On the other hand, because of COVID, the other big cohort of people who generally volunteer for campaigns are seniors who are a little bit restricted this cycle because of COVID. And so I do think you'll have a test of the mobilization strategy in a sense, which is I think the Democrats aren't going to have a particularly strong grassroots support and relative to say the Obama years. But they might make up for it by, not turning away people in the middle. So, that's sort of still the big question, and we'll never know the real answer to it. But it is kind of stunning to see at least the students, around campus or in other universities, they didn't like Biden, they don't like Biden, and they're not going to go work for him. So, it really depends on the people who do like Biden to fill those roles as donors and volunteers.
But they are going to vote for him. They'll hold their nose. But they're not going to vote for him, right? I mean, they're not going to vote for Donald Trump.
Right.
I'll say that, when we talk about this mobilization versus persuasion, I think right after 2016, I was probably more sort of in the camp of thinking that mobilization was what hurt Democrats in 2016. But I've definitely been convinced by the evidence that both I've looked at, but also like other people have looked at since that election, that really, yes, and it's such a close election, both mattered, but I think persuasion was probably a much bigger deal. Me and a couple of collaborators wrote this article in the New York Times called "The Missing Obama Millions," and where did they go? Well, some of them didn't vote, but even more of them voted for Trump. And if someone does or doesn't vote, that's a change of one vote on the margin. When somebody switches sides, that's 2 votes on the margin. That's a much bigger effect. And so you take a big number who were switching sides and multiply that by 2, and I think it was probably the bigger deal in 2016.
Donald Trump has been behind pretty much for the past 6 months. The polls have been very steady, as we've noted. Is there anything that could change the dynamic of this election in the last couple of weeks? Is there an October surprise that you think could pop up and change this dynamic? Yeah, Eitan.
The 2 obvious things I think are, one, Biden is a very old candidate, and so he might perform pretty badly in the debates. It's a chance of that, and it might give people a second look at Trump. I mean, the biggest thing is the trajectory of the virus. A lot can change in the next 4 weeks that potentially could favor Trump. I think, all parents of young kids will know that, we're in a terrible situation with school districts, and it's not clear who voters are going to blame for that. It's in part, you might think they'll blame the incumbent president for not doing more, but there might be a lot of anger against teachers unions and their Democratic allies who have been overly restrictive in the minds of some voters. And depending on how that's framed and what the trajectory of the virus is the next few weeks, I think there's a good chance we could see pretty dramatic change in the fortunes of President Trump.
So when you ask if there could be some October surprise, the point that comes to my mind immediately is that if 2020, honestly, if the last 4 years have taught us anything, it's that it's illustrated to us the limits of our imagination. I don't think any of us would have imagined where we are right now as a country. So yes, surprises are possible and probably inevitable, but what exactly they will be are things that we may not even be able to conceive of right now.
Yeah.
One likely surprise, Jim, is that there will be an announcement about a vaccine toward end of October, if not before. One thing that's different in this election, though, in terms of an October surprise, is by mid-October, close to half the electorate may have voted already. Tens of millions of ballots have already been mailed. By the second week in September, looking back, people were already voting in North Carolina. So the closer we get to Election Day, the fewer voters that are actually left out there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I will say that my favorite newspaper headline is "Surprise Expected in Maine Caucuses." And the idea that we're expecting a surprise is kind of an interesting one to me. But I do tend to think that we will see an attempt at a surprise. We've certainly seen some unveiling of big and important things in the past several weeks and months, including in the Middle East. But again, they haven't moved anything. A scandal or a disaster to anybody else has not moved the poll numbers, and these big unveiling of big policies or breakthroughs in the Middle East or elsewhere haven't either. So it really is kind of a remarkable election season in how steady this has all been.
Can I just say that
you were talking about political science, look at elections, Jim, is that political scientists are very respectful of voters, and that we assume, or we think we have evidence, that voters vote the way they do for a reason. They are not fickle. They don't jump around very much. Some do switch from election to election, as Brian indicated, but most vote the same way all the time, and they have deeply felt beliefs. And what happens in the last few days of the campaign, if things are very close, yeah, that can make a difference, but most likely won't.
Yeah, and Brian?
Just to hedge a little bit. I mean, on one hand, I see a straight line in the polls, and I just assume, well, I can continue drawing that straight line, and that'll be the outcome. And if we think, okay, right now, Biden's ahead by 7 or 8 points, we think maybe automatically, well, that's a lot of narrowing that would have to happen. But actually, because of the Electoral College, it doesn't have to narrow by more than maybe 4 points. I think a lot of the simulations I've seen for this year suggest that Biden really needs to win the popular vote by maybe 3.5% in order to basically do better than a 50-50 chance of winning the Electoral College. So when you start thinking that way, well, it's actually, pretty reasonable to think, okay, it's definitely plausible that that margin could shrink, from 7 or 8 points to, 3 or 4 or 5 points, and in that case, you're getting close to a coin flip election.
We live in Massachusetts. Everybody around us on a college campus does tend to be left of center. Not everybody, but many. And there is some nervousness, particularly some post-traumatic syndrome from 2016. Brian, from what you say, there's reason to be worried. Is that correct?
I mean, of course, on one hand, you look at the polls and the trends and you say, wow, it's hard to imagine all of a sudden it's going to start fluctuating in a way that it just hasn't fluctuated all year long. But, we generally see some tightening closer to election day and pretty much any campaign. There's, I think if you look at the polls right now, I think, you'd say it's something like 50-43. And, so there's 7% out there that are maybe thinking about a third party, or maybe they come back to Trump, and all of a sudden, again, you're getting closer to that margin where, I'd be very confident in saying right now that Trump will not win the popular vote. But, it definitely could get close enough where the Electoral College is, very much up for grabs. So I think, I think there's almost nothing you can say to Democrats right now that makes them feel, I've tried, but there's nothing you can say to make them feel better. And that maybe from their perspective, that's probably good, because, if, the more worried you are about the outcome, presumably the more likely you are to do something about it. I think there's some evidence that in 2016, one of the problems Clinton had might have been that some people were overconfident.
Yeah, Debbie?
Yeah, I wonder why you would try to make them feel better. I think it's entirely realistic to think for Democrats that Biden probably will win the popular vote, but it is not at all clear that he's going to win the electoral vote. I felt that way for a really long time, and I usually try to avoid the election prediction business, but I've been feeling for a very long time that it is very plausible that Biden will win the popular vote, maybe by a lot, maybe more than Hillary Clinton did, and still not win the Electoral College. And I don't know why you would try to make people feel better about that. I think it's a very reasonable expectation.
Try to make everyone feel better.
Hey, Tom, you were shaking your head. Did you want to pop in here?
Well, I mean, I think that after the 2016 election, there were a series of excuses, essentially, the Democrats made for why the election wasn't their fault. Claims that 500,000 people in Wisconsin were denied the vote because of voter ID law, which is like a completely implausible analysis. Cambridge Analytica doing something with personality-based targeting, which was kind of a joke. Russian interference, which from everything we know was not enough to amount to a significant number of votes. The real answer is the Democrats lost the election, and again, there was this, you called it some kind of post-traumatic thing. It was just on college campuses. I think nationwide, Democrats were looking for a reason to believe that this wasn't a real election result. I think there is actually a concern that there could be another legitimate victory by Trump in the Electoral College, and Democrats will go down the same path of thinking that because of election integrity or interference for other reason, it wasn't a legitimate victory. And so I guess what I would say is, when I see the fact that there are no students or very few students volunteering, I kind of don't believe the deep worry that a lot of people bring to this. If you look in 2016, of the people who said on surveys that they were very concerned about the election of Donald Trump, fewer than 5% reported volunteering at all for any campaign or party. Fewer than 5%. And so, what does that mean? People are really worried, but don't do anything. Maybe it means they're not so worried. I think after 2016, you look at much higher volunteerism, particularly among women on the Democratic side, creating groups like Indivisible. You see a surge of participation of African Americans and Latinos. And I think the political science story behind that engagement is essentially a lot of people felt threatened in a way that they hadn't previously felt threatened, and they felt threatened enough to do something. But when you look at, particularly like college-educated white voters who, are doing pretty well, and you see them say they're very anxious or nervous, but don't engage in any kind of volunteerism, I don't know if I believe them.
You raised the issue of voter suppression, and of course that is part of the conversation right now, as well as the viability of mail ballots, and whether they will invite fraud or whether they will introduce chaos into the election, as we saw in some of the primaries. Are you concerned about how the election is going to be conducted? There's a lot of hand-wringing out there right now. Is it an attempt to sort of raise these issues so that they bring a lot of eyes to them beforehand, or is there real concern about this?
So I would say, and I have to say, I'm working on a bunch of court cases involving these kinds of issues. There's a lot of going on. Every state is basically changing its laws to, for the most part, make voting by mail easier. Some cases making it a little harder. There's interactions of laws in interesting ways. So for example, if a state has a voter ID law, how do you adopt that law to a mail setting? But we're certainly on track, as Jeff said, to see something like 55 or 60% of voters casting ballots by mail. In some states, the deadline is it's a postmarked by, like it has to be postmarked by Election Day. But in a number of states, it's received by. And if there's a deadline that's received by Election Day, and we have delays because election administrators are doing this for the first time, and the post office has changed its policies, that leads to delays, then I think there is cause for concern. I mean, it kind of would require a perfect storm. If it's mostly not close at a state-by-state basis, then it might not matter. But yeah, there's a real concern that it could, states could take a very long time to count it, actually too long compared to our deadline. I was just going over with students the 12th Amendment, which is, what the 12th Amendment of the Constitution, which outlines what happens if the Electoral College victory is not a majority victory. And the answer is basically, this is like, you don't want to look under the hood of this part of the Constitution. We're just in complete no man's land of like, we don't know what's supposed to happen. And I mean, we know what's supposed to happen, but it hasn't happened in a very long time. And like, I think for all of our sakes, no matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, you don't want us to go down that path. So the best we can say is let's hope for a clear victory early for someone.
And you commented earlier, Eitan, about the lack of student activism for particular candidates. One thing that I'm seeing on this campus is a lot of activism simply on getting people registered and getting them to develop a plan to vote. And that's something that's pretty new. There's there's certainly been voter mobilization efforts on campus before, but this explicit discussion of what's your plan is something that's really new. And I think that that's something that's happening on a lot of campuses. I'm not sure how much it's taking root outside of campuses, but the idea that you can't assume that just on election day you'll be able to vote in an unproblematic way, and that you need to think about it beforehand. I know that our own Jumbo Vote has put together a worksheet. What's your state? Are you registered? What's the deadline? And has these little flow charts and checklists that people can do, so that nothing's a surprise, and make sure that they're able to get their ballot in. And so there's some activism on that part, and I wonder if that's happening more widespread in general out there, even if we aren't seeing a lot of activism for Joe Biden, say, in particular.
There was some commentary about an electoral misfire where one candidate wins the popular vote and the other one wins the electoral vote. If we were to have an electoral misfire in this upcoming election, it would mean that in 3 of the last 6 elections and 3 of the last 4 Republican victories would be via an electoral misfire. So if we could project beyond the election, if we have an electoral misfire, if we have it 2 times in a row and 3 times out of 6 elections, do you see mobilization against the Electoral College finally coming to happen?
No, I don't. It's just too difficult. You know, after Trump's election where he didn't, get a majority of the vote, nothing happened in terms of an effort to change the Constitution. It's just so difficult. You need 3/4 of the states, 2/3 of the Congress, and a lot of the small states, particularly small Republican states, do not want the Electoral College changed. They feel they have more impact because of the Electoral College. So if it happens again, we're just going to see consistency and people are just going to throw their hands up.
Yeah, a number of states have voted for this interstate compact, it's called, National Popular Interstate Compact. Only Democratic states really have voted for it, which would essentially give the majority winner all the Electoral College votes. But it's not just a partisan issue. It's sort of like a strategy issue, which is, I think that in 2016 in particular, based on ad spending and so forth, it wasn't clear that Hillary Clinton was playing an Electoral College strategy, that she was trying to target voters strategically given what the rules of the game were. Here it's a little bit different, where I think that the Democrats have learned that lesson a little bit since 2016. And so if we see the same results, it's possible that more people will be on board that this is an issue. But the design of the system is so that campaigns will appeal to these states, and part of this are the strategic choices of campaigns and what gets people excited, and it might not be the issues of Iowa.
Yeah, I think if it happened 2 elections in a row, we'd see more discussion and more activism on the issue, but I wouldn't necessarily expect anything to come of it. I'm reading a new book right now, actually, about the Electoral College and past efforts to get rid of it, and by a historian at Harvard. And he writes that the Electoral College has seen more amendments introduced than any other topic throughout our country's history. It has never been popular. People have always tried to get rid of it. There have been times where it has gotten the requisite votes in the House or the Senate, but never both at the same time. For the reasons that Jeff suggested, I think there'd be more discussion, but I wouldn't necessarily expect that discussion to amount to actual change.
Let's talk about another possible outcome here, which is that Joe Biden wins. Right now, Donald Trump has suggested that he might not accept that. Is that bluster, or do you think there's anything real behind that? And do you have any concern about that?
Do we have to predict what Trump does? I don't think political scientists are trained for that kind of task. But so setting aside what Trump does, I think I strangely still have sort of faith. I think Donald Trump can only do so much on his own. I think, whatever Donald Trump tries to do, I do have faith that, most of the Republican elected officials would not sort of go down a road with him of sort of, basically saying he won an election that he clearly lost. So my worry is sort of probably the one that I think Eitan is alluding to, which is that we have sort of unclear outcomes in several states for several weeks, which allows everything to be so muddled that, you know, by the time we do have an outcome, people can sort of claim that it was fraudulent in either direction. But in terms of like, you know, Trump, trying to sort of come out and cause a controversy over a very clear outcome, I'd like to think that most of the Republican elected officials wouldn't go down that path.
Yeah, I'll make a long-term prediction.
Yeah.
The long-term prediction is, you know, I think in the same way that Democrats in the Congress really resisted the Trump election in so much as they investigated things like Cambridge Analytica and the Russian interference and all that, I think we're likely to see a similar situation. If Biden wins, it likely comes with the Senate. The Democrats will control the Congress at that point. But within 2 years, probably the same thing will happen last time Democrats controlled Congress, which is 2 years later, just Democrats have taken a breath and they just sit home. Republicans get the Congress again, and then you can really count on just endless investigations into everything from the mail balloting to China engagement and election tampering, all sorts of other things. I mean, the real thing here is that the nationalization of elections, the focus of everyone's energy on the presidential election, means that you have these big swings. And, you know, I think as soon as the Democrats are in office for one cycle in control of the Congress and the presidency, they'll lose almost immediately. And then we'll just start this whole cycle again. There's my prediction.
Well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much to my colleagues for joining in this very stimulating conversation. We look forward to seeing you in 4 years at Parents Weekend when we reconstitute this panel and prepare for the 2024 election. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day. Hello again. I'm back with a brief postscript to the Family Weekend conversation that I had with my colleagues about the 2020 election. That conversation was taped on Thursday, September 17. We knew that there would be an October surprise, but little did we know that it would happen in September. Indeed, the very next day, Justice Ginsburg passed away. Justice Ginsburg's passing was the first of several extraordinary events. The decision of Republicans to push forward a conservative nominee to the court before the election, President Trump's nomination of Judge Amy Coney Barrett, the New York Times explosive report on Donald Trump's taxes, a chaotic debate that garnered terrible reviews for the president's behavior, and finally, the virus's penetration of the White House and the president's illness. It was one bombshell after another. How much more can happen? As I review our conversation, it still resonates. Most notably, Professor Schaffner's observation about the stability of the polls in reaction to these big events. It turns out that the past 2 weeks have just been an extension of 4 years of extraordinary events, norm-busting actions by President Trump, and 4 years with very little movement in public approval or disapproval of the president. Things that should have helped him didn't, and things that should have hurt him haven't. Candidate Trump once famously said that he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and not lose any voters. And I think he was right about that. That he could contract a life-threatening illness and not generate any support is the other side of that coin. As Professor Berry noted, we political scientists try to analyze above the day-to-day and understand political outcomes with a broader perspective and the analytical tools of social scientists. But that doesn't mean that the course of the campaign isn't important. There's more to happen between now and Election Day. Stay tuned because surprise is expected.
Indeed. Thank you, Dean Glaser. I want to thank the panel for their perspective. And to parents out there, I want to say this. There will be a time when professor or several Tufts professors are going to become a part of your sons or daughters' lives, and they'll affect their lives and they'll talk about them. And I know that because Professor Berry was one of my favorite professors, and I talk about him to my newsroom to this day. A quick reminder to those of you out there who are sending questions to us, we are going to get to them. We have a few more things on tape, but we're going to also finish with a live Q&A, and we'll get to as many questions as we can.
And you know, Neil, as both a political science major and a journalist, that conversation was fascinating to me, having just returned from Michigan. In my job as a co-anchor of Nightline, I interviewed Governor Whitmer and did a canvass of the entire battleground state of Michigan. So as a journalist, they're right. We have very different perspectives than political scientists. Earlier, we saw a day in the life of students, and now we're going to get a day in the life of a faculty member. We also wanted to share how thoughtful and passionate the faculty are in engaging with teaching and with research and with our students day in and day out. Chris Swann is Associate Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Tufts, but he also wears many other hats, right, Neil?
Indeed, that's right. Professor Swann also serves as the Dean of Undergraduate Education for the School of Engineering, as faculty liaison with the Tisch School of Civic Life, and as an adjunct associate professor in the Department of Education in the School of Arts and Sciences. And besides all of that, he's also a parent of 2 recent graduates at Tufts. We asked him to share some of his time with us to see how the faculty are embracing this semester's challenges and opportunities.
Hi, my name is Chris Swann. I'm currently the Dean of Undergraduate Education for the School of Engineering. I'm also a faculty member in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. I do teach one class. I have one class each semester. This semester I'm teaching a first-year engineering course called Civil Infrastructure, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. The course explores 4 different civil infrastructure components associated with water, energy, transportation, and our waste management. And most of it is focused in the United States, even though I touch on things globally. For this class, it would normally be in person and a lot of work outside of class, where the students would actually go and talk to people about their innovation and about their concepts. I'm limiting now that ability. COVID is really doing it for us. So there will be less of those opportunities, but there is Zoom. There is the opportunity to meet with people in other ways. I teach a course with a lot of hands-on opportunities. We're going to be making concrete in the class. Normally that would be done in the lab, but I have had to modify the lab so that we can do it actually in the classroom itself. And we're getting that opportunity, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the students actually operate within that space. I know now that the class can be done from a remote standpoint. It's been set up so that students can do synchronous or asynchronous involvement in the class, and the hope is that we can now start looking at not only my class but more classes having that same sort of mode. What that does in terms of our opportunities here at Tufts is gives us a chance to think about outside of Tufts as another audience, because if they can attach to us in a synchronous or asynchronous mode, why are we restricting them only to being on campus? We can have students that can exist in other countries. We can also have students who are not students at Tufts. And that does allow you to think bigger about what the impact of Tufts education could be. I can say that what I do is not, it's an interesting area for me. As with all research, it may not be interesting to everyone. But what I try to do is take the waste materials that we are creating and try to find another use for them. For the last few years, I've been looking at all different types of waste and using them within construction. But one of the things that we did was we took some waste from plastics. So we have a significant plastic waste issue. We also have coal ash. And so fly ash, which escapes from the flues of coal burning utilities, which at one time 50% of the power in the United States was from coal burning. And while it has significantly reduced, it is still a major component of our energy. We want to take those 2 waste streams that are created and combine them together. We created a synthetic aggregate that consists of those 2 materials. So I have it right here. So Synthetic lightweight aggregate, or SLA, is the material that we have created. And just to show it in terms of what it looks like, that's it. It's basically a black sand and gravel. So outside of Tufts, outside the classroom, should say, Tufts is initiating the Tufts as an anti-racist institution initiative. Basically what it involves is looking at Tufts inside, being very reflective on the policies and the things that we do here, and looking at ways in which we can make changes. I've been at Tufts for 26 years. I've had the luxury, if you will, of having my two daughters actually attend Tufts and succeed very well, graduates of 16 and 18, and moved on and to pursue new avenues. I get to be a proud parent and talk about the things that they have done. I can honestly say though that Tufts really did offer a great deal to them and allowed them to grow as students, but also as human beings. I can also tell you that I started here 26 years ago. 2 months into being here at Tufts, I said I should have went to Tufts for my undergrad because the place was just that special. You could just feel it in its interactions and the way that people were highly engaging with you. So I really look forward to this year. I think we'll have opportunities to be that engaging, and I hope that all goes well.
Thank you, Professor Swann. You know, I think you're right. Tufts is a special place. I feel that as an alum, I feel it as a parent, and I'm reminded of the beloved Saul Gittleman, who wrote a book about the entrepreneurial spirit at Tufts, and I think you see it in everything that happens. Professors and students saying, even in the face of a pandemic, we are going to use our inspiration, our education, our innovation, and still turn it into something positive. Well, we talked a little bit about teaching. We've talked about reading. We want to talk about students and how they can take advantage of a range of extracurricular events and groups, as well as sports and fitness.
And so to dig into that subject, we're going to see what engaging opportunities are available to our students this semester. So we asked Camille Lizalibar, Dean of Student Affairs, and John Morris, Director of Athletics, to share some of their insights into what's available for students both on and off campus. Take it away.
Well, thank you, Juju and Neil. It's really great to be with all of you today. I hope everyone is enjoying this virtual Parents and Family Weekend program. My name is John Morris, and I am Director of Athletics here at Tufts. I have to say, I was so pleased to be asked to participate in this program with you today, and I was especially excited when I heard who I'd be getting to partner with today. She is just an awesome colleague who is still relatively new to Tufts, but she's already made her presence felt around campus in so many positive ways, which I'll say it's not easy to do when you start a new job during a pandemic. Camille, I will turn it over to you to say hello and introduce yourself, but why don't we also get it started off with the first question? Perhaps you can tell us how the transition's been going to Tufts, all things considered.
Thanks, John, for that. That was a very nice introduction. So I'm Camille Lizalibar. I'm the new Dean of Student Affairs. I have to say the transition has been going really well, even though it's been, let's say, a unique moment to transition. I would say I feel a real solidarity with our class of 2024. I think we're having possibly very similar first-year experiences. I mean, I came in knowing almost no one, and John, you were one of the first people to reach out to me, and you've been wonderful. But I mostly meet people on Zoom, and then the few times that I get to see people, I can barely recognize them. We're all wearing masks, we're staying away from each other, and you know, let's be real, John, I don't even know yet just how much taller than me you are. So, you know, it's quite a different kind of transition. Plus, you know, everything this year is a different version of something that I haven't really done the first time, you know, orientation, the illumination ceremony. I have to say, though, everyone's been really amazing. I mean, colleagues, faculty, students, everybody I've been meeting has just been really kind and helpful. And, you know, we're all in this together, and we're going to have to make the most of it, because that's what we do. So, but let me ask you, John. I mean, I know that the fitness center is open, and I know that so are some of our outdoor athletic spaces. So are students staying active? And where are things right now with student recreation and wellness?
Well, our students have been staying active. At least it appears to me that they are. But it is something we're paying really close attention to. It's been amazing. We've been blessed by some really nice weather to get the year off to a good start. And when I'm on campus, it's really uplifting to see so many students out there running, walking, just enjoying being out and about on campus. Unfortunately, the pandemic has prevented us from running a lot of the most popular intramural programs and recreation programs that we like to do, like dodgeball and flag football. But we are trying to be creative and offer as much as we can. We're sponsoring student cornhole tournaments and student can jam tournaments, and we're still offering most of our PE classes that are popular with the students. And Camille, we've put on our website a whole host of free yoga and exercise videos that students can use in their residence halls and in their off-campus apartments. And as you indicated, fortunately, we were able to open the fitness center and the pool for student use. They have to make reservations using an online reservation system. That enables us to not have lines and keep the facility really clean between uses. It's interesting, we've noticed there hasn't been heavy use of the fitness center yet, but I think that's a factor of the great weather we've been having, and we do expect the usage to ramp up significantly once the weather turns. So it is good to see our students staying active, and we'll do everything we can to keep giving them opportunities to remain active, because it is such an important part of their overall physical and mental well-being here at Tufts. But anyway, that's enough for me on that. Let me ask you one. Other than sports and classes, what do you see students doing outside of class?
You know, I think a lot of the same things that you're seeing. Everybody's trying to spend as much time outside as they can. They're enjoying their time on campus, spending time together, even if life looks a little bit different right now. You know, like you said, we can't have large gatherings, especially indoors. And so we're really trying to encourage using all of campus as a great big space for everyone. So I'm sure you've seen, we have all those really beautiful Adirondack chairs everywhere. And those have been super popular. You know, students can gather in small groups, they can hang out with friends, they can have lunch, they can study. So, you know, we're looking into all kinds of ways to see if we can extend that, even, you know, when we get into some more New England kind of weather. And students are also participating in student organizations. A lot of those have had to move their activities online, but it's still a way to build community, to engage in projects, and to do things that aren't necessarily academics. You know, speaking of connecting and building community, John, I know that your student athletes are really good at this, but I'm wondering, how are they handling all the uncertainty about the things that they can and can't do athletically, and whether they'll even be able to compete this year?
I have to say, I think the attitude of the student athletes has been far better than mine. You know, just like all the Tufts students, I've just been so impressed with how they've handled this start to a rather unusual semester. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're very disappointed not to get to be playing. But, you know, our student athletes, they just love Tufts. And they're really, it's just been fascinating to see them take such pride and such ownership in doing their part to keep the campus safe and help the university finish this semester strong. They're really focused on their training, and they're working hard in the weight room. But what I keep hearing most from them is an abiding sense of gratitude. They're just so grateful. They're grateful to have a president like Tony Monaco leading us through all of this. They know he values what they're doing. They trust him. But really, they're just grateful for the opportunity to be back on campus, to continue their education in person, and to spend time with their friends. You know, I got a great note from a first year student athlete, and what she wrote to me was this. She said, "Even with all the restrictions, I've been having an amazing time at Tufts and with my team. I really appreciate everything that was done to make this semester happen. in whatever capacity is possible, because it means a lot to me just to be able to be on campus with everyone. And that just, that's awesome. It tells me the students are just happy and grateful to be here at Tufts. Well, Camille, I know it's also been challenging for student life, just like athletics, to manage all the uncertainties and public health guidelines. With all that, what kind of programming has your office developed for the students?
Well, like you said, John, I mean, it has been really challenging, but, this has given us a chance to be really, really creative, to think outside the box. And so Campus Life has been working really hard to offer students other options for socializing, for de-stressing, and even just to do something a little bit different during the day. I mean, we had, for example, we have these grab and go events. And so you can stop by, you can pick something up to mark a specific day. Last week, there was National Elephant Day. And so we had grab and go where students could come by, they could grab a bag of elephant cookies, and, small things like that, something to just brighten up their day. We've also had a lot of our big group programming has had to move online, but all of those things are still happening so students can participate. So for example, our film series is fully online right now. And there are also a lot of other groups on campus that are doing programming. So the identity houses continue to offer programming. They've had online gatherings, they've had retreats. TUSC, which is the Tufts Student Government, they've come up with really great events. They have this late night series that recently included, the late night fun caricatures, where students could drop by and they could have their caricature done in a 5-minute sitting. There was also a tie-dye session for students who missed out on that fashion throwback over the summer. And so we may not really be able to do the big group events, but we are working to find fun and meaningful ways to have students connect and to build community.
It sounds like this has been a pretty good transition this year, all things considered, but I'm wondering, what have you been most grateful for?
I've been really grateful that everyone is really trying their best. I mean, the collaborative spirit here has just been incredible. We've all had to get used to new habits like wearing masks and thinking about how we socialize. And I think students have really stepped up to the challenge. No one's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes, but I think the general spirit has been, to be generous and be supportive of each other. And that has really brought everyone together. And it's been all of these restrictions and these difficulties that have made us realize just how special and important it is to be together. And I think I'm most grateful to see how, staff and students and faculty have all come together this way for a kind of common good. And that's been really, truly wonderful. That reminds me, John, I know that your staff has been an amazing support in general to all of the work that my office has been doing. And so I'm hoping you don't mind sharing what your coaches have been up to this fall.
I like to brag on our staff whenever I can, but I'm so proud of how our coaches and our entire staff has responded to all this. I mean, as always, our coaches are focused first and foremost on their student athletes, coaching them, mentoring them, supporting them during this very unusual semester. But what I've been really impressed with is just how much they've stepped up to help the campus. Just like you indicated, everyone at Tufts is. That's kind of the silver lining in all this. It's made me feel so connected to Tufts as we've all fought through this together. Since March, the 2 questions I've gotten the most from our coaches and staff is, when do you think we'll be able to compete? But then the other one is, how can we help the university? How can we help all the students? And I'm just so proud. Our coaches have volunteered a ton of hours to help housing and residential life with the arrival testing, a ton of hours to help dining services with getting all the students acclimated to the new dining protocols. But perhaps most significantly was the partnership with your office. Student Affairs, as you know, reached out and asked our coaches and staff to serve as the individual case managers for all the students at Tufts who test positive and end up in the mods in isolation, and all the students end up having to quarantine. And so our coaches are calling, texting, emailing all these students to support them, answer their questions, help them navigate everything that happens when they have to self-quarantine or move to isolation. And I just love that. As you said, at Tufts, we're all in this together. And I see our coaches and staff living that every day. And it just makes me really proud to be a Jumbo.
That's really great to hear, John. And I can't tell you how grateful we have all been for everything the coaches have done. So, this is why it's been an easy transition after all.
Well, that's great. I think, Camille, we're probably exhausted our time. They put us low in the batting order, and I'm sure some of these parents and family members are having some Zoom fatigue. So we should probably just sign off. But on behalf of Camille, just want to say how grateful we both are to have your students here at Tufts, and how grateful we are to have gotten to spend a few minutes with you. Enjoy the rest of the program.
John and Camille, we're indeed grateful to you. We're running out of time. We want to get to the live Q&A section. We've invited several Tufts staff members to join us to answer some of your questions.
But this is not the end of the game. This is what we call batting cleanup, right? This is the grand finale that we're heading into, and we want to thank everyone for previously submitting questions. We're getting a lot of questions. We're collating them. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. If we don't get to yours specifically, look either on the Tufts COVID Facts FAQ page, or hopefully we'll answer some of these questions in the weeks to come. And if you have a question now, you can just enter it below the video player. So Neil, you want to introduce our live panel?
Absolutely. Joining us today are Michelle Bowdler, Executive Director of Health and Wellness Services, Robin Olinsky, Associate Dean, Undergraduate Advising, Josh Hartman, Director of Residential Life and Learning, and Chris DeFranzo, Associate Director, Tufts Career Services and Director of Tufts Finance Initiative. Thank you all for joining us. We have so many questions. Let me get to the first. It's about advising, and it's for Robin. How do advising staff and faculty work proactively to support students, and what happens if my student really needs to talk with someone but isn't connecting with the resources?
Sure, thank you. I think one of the biggest challenges in students transitioning to college is helping them understand what resources are available and how they can access them. This is going to be a huge leap for many of your students. They are now being expected to take charge of this experience, and they are going to struggle with this independence a little bit. So I'm going to encourage you as their families to really push back against your own urge to solve this for them, and instead really coach them through how to solve some of these questions and concerns on their own. This may include you asking them who they've connected with on campus, and maybe even helping them brainstorm some questions that they can prepare in advance of meeting with our staff. We do have a lot of systems in place to reach out to students directly and proactively, but we really are best situated to help them when they reach out to us. Proactive outreach looks different depending upon your student's degree program and who their advisors are. But all students are required to meet with someone on the advising staff, usually their faculty advisor, prior to registration. But we are all always available to meet many times throughout the semester. So most advisors reach out to students for general check-ins, as well as around critical deadlines. If your student's advisor hasn't requested a meeting yet, your student should really be encouraged to reach out. Our course instructors are also encouraged to submit progress reports to the advising deans throughout the semester. It's not required, but when the advising deans receive notifications that a student's not attending class, not submitting assignments, earning below a C-, they will reach out to the student and the student's advisor. Depending upon the circumstances, the dean may also meet with the student. It's important for you to remember that most of our classes are structured really differently than what you're used to seeing in high school classes. Our instructors aren't seeing your students daily, and they're also not assigning graded work on a regular basis. Your student could be in a class where they only have 1 or 2 papers total for the whole semester, so we may not get performance feedback as regularly as you'd like. But if at any time you're concerned about your students' progress or their ability to connect with resources, please connect with your student's advising dean. We can't share a lot of information about their record without their permission, but we can hear your concerns and listen to what you're worried about, and then reach out to the student to have a conversation with them. I know that it's really frustrating for you to know that there are so many of us ready and willing to talk with your student, and to see your student not really being able to make that connection. But please don't worry alone, and reach out to the advising dean's office.
That's excellent. Thank you. And I have a question for Michelle from one of our parents. It's the last town hall, President Monaco indicated the majority of positives on COVID were related to people meeting with other people off campus, and he thus encouraged students not to meet with people off campus. To that end, are you encouraging students not to go off campus, if at all possible, for any non-necessary reasons, such as asking them to avoid eating off campus when possible?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I think that that can be complicated. What we're finding right now is that students are working really, really hard to abide by the parameters that President Monaco and others have set. They're wearing their masks, they're social distancing, and they really want this semester to be able to be completed. And so some people do need to go off campus, as you know, for jobs and internships, and to buy food or to go to a pharmacy. And so I think what's important to remember out of that question and what President Monaco said is that going off campus and seeing people who aren't in your cohort, or going outside and thinking, well, we're outside, so it's okay if we're sitting side by side, as long as we're outside, we don't need to wear masks, that actually is problematic. And that what's important is that if you that you try not to go outside your cohort, that you do, when you're inside, that you do maintain social distancing, that you do wash your hands regularly and bring hand sanitizer with you, and that the first thing you do when you come back from being off campus is to wash your hands and or sanitize. And so that is, I think that's really the principle behind President Monaco's comments. And I really do have to hand it to the students because they have just done a fantastic job.
Thank you, Michelle. Our next question is about residential life and learning. It's for Josh. Our daughter is currently a sophomore, but is already feeling pressure to find housing for next year off campus. However, she's also very interested in trying to live on campus, but doesn't know whether she'll be able to secure a place on campus. Could you please discuss the disconnect between apparently needing to sign a lease for next year in the near future and the lack of certainty regarding on-campus housing availability?
Sure, thank you for the question, and I'm glad I have the opportunity to answer that question in front of a large group of parents, because I think this is a very, very common misconception out in the universe right now. Not even in COVID times. In general, this is a misconception out there. First is that the vast majority, over 70% of our students sign leases after March. So late February into March and then beyond for that following fall semester. What that winds up meaning is that the students who are signing leases right now are feeling a sense of anxiety and pressure that is truly put on them by the landlords and is in some ways a little predatory in a way that, my office is not very happy about. It's difficult for us to do anything about it except for to advise students and parents not to sign leases right now. Most of the leases are available in the spring, and we do highly recommend that folks wait until then. That being said, I can give you some actual data and statistics. I'm in my third year here at Tufts. Every year that I've been here at Tufts, every single student who wanted to live on campus has been offered a space on campus. Even from our wait list, which at times has gone up to 400 people, we have always been able to offer a space on campus to every student who wanted it at some point in the process. So I think that's an important element for folks to understand as well. Our housing selection process this year is going to be pushed back slightly. Normally we would start our housing lottery in the fall. Obviously, given the uncertainty about what COVID will bring and what the path of the pandemic will be, we didn't think it was fair to ask students to kind of lock themselves into a housing process right now. Again, another reason why we encourage them not to sign leases right now, and instead wait until the beginning of the spring when we'll be able to let folks kind of have a little bit more sense as to what our environment will look like in the fall. The last thing that I'll mention about this is that we partner with apartments.com through our off-campus housing website. So we actually have a pretty good amount of listings on our off-campus housing site. Folks should go in and take a look at that. It's offcampus.tufts.edu. And then in our department, we have a staff member who works primarily with off-campus students and helps support them with looking at leases and things like that. And I will lastly say that my office has spent a good amount of time in the last 7 months talking to students about how to get out of leases that they signed too early and that they wanted to get out of. And it's very difficult to get out of a legally binding lease when you sign it so early. So again, I would just say I'd highly recommend that folks wait. And again, we've been able to offer spaces to everybody who wanted things. Maybe not right away, but at some point we've been able to.
That was such a comprehensive answer. Thank you. Our next question is for the Career Center for Chris, but I should point out in our poll, it turns out 60% of the people on this call are freshman parents. And yet this question about the Career Center runs the spectrum of all grades. So here we go. We received a lot of questions about helping students of all class years. For example, how do you help my first year, my sophomore, my junior, or my senior? With that in mind, can you talk about how the Career Center helps students of all class years and majors get internships and jobs?
Sure, something that is near and dear to our heart in the Career Center, and I know near and dear to a lot of parents' hearts as well as our students. So the cool thing about the Tufts Career Center is that we are a lifelong resource. So we literally start, those of you that are parents of first years, when your first year arrived, or we started the process. But we're there all the way through graduation. So for your sophomores, juniors, seniors, but we're there beyond as well. So alumni who actually look for roles, we have an alumni career services, right? So Neil, if ever's looking for an opportunity, he can come to the Career Center and we have folks to talk with him. So it really runs the gamut. It is truly your full life. But our career advising team really understands the value of both career exploration, which your first years and sophomores, and sometimes even your juniors and seniors are partaking in, but also focused career preparation. And again, it could be a first year who really knows what they want to do, or it could be a senior, or anywhere in between. So we actually have a group of generalist advisors that can help folks and students that are really exploring, and they're in discovery mode, and they're really trying to figure things out. Then we also have special advisors like myself, where we can help students as they begin to hone in on a particular area and go deeper to really understand the needs and what they need to do. Moving forward in an area, though, does not say that you've now closed the door everywhere else, because you can continue to explore, and because your career journey is just that. It is a lifelong journey. But some of the nuts and bolts stuff that we do, we can help first years reflect and figure out major choices, opportunities for experiential learning, maybe which classes to take. We can look at resumes and cover letters and your marketing materials. We talk to students a lot about networking, and we try not to call it networking, we call it conversations, because it's just talking to people. But we coach them on the ways to talk with alumni and friends and family to gain the knowledge that they need so that they can go deeper in a particular area and find out that they love it or they don't. Because part of the process is figuring out some things that you don't want to do. So we guide them to different resources, whether it's potential employers, finding an internship. We help them create strong applications. We coach them in their interviewing process. And then, we can help them make final decisions when it comes to it. Our team also teaches classes through the X College. So we teach career development classes. I teach a financial literacy class. We have a sophomore career summit that we run. We bring professionals in for our professionals in residence. We have career fairs. We bring in panelists. We do a lot of different things to make sure that we're engaging students where they are, whether they are right at the start of the process or they're really deep in. We do some special things for seniors, for those of you that are folks, parents of seniors and family of seniors. We do some special things for them because we know that they're trying to launch into the career. So we have a hashtag adulting series where topics include decision-making, salary negotiation. We do some life skills. There's a managing your personal finances, which is taught by a third party. So we bring in a partner of ours that we've known for years. And then lastly is our employer relations team. We actually have a whole team of people that focus on connecting with employers and encouraging them to recruit Tufts talent. So they are reaching out proactively to connect with employers that your students are interested in talking to. And so that's a way that we holistically try to bring folks in to gain opportunities for first years, sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Chris, thank you for laying out all those many, many options. Our next question is about advising for Rob, and the question is, what are the academic plans for spring 2021, and what are my students' options?
So this is also a very hot topic right now. So I'm really glad to have a chance to talk with you all about this. We are really advising students right now to expect much of the same that they are experiencing right now for their spring semester academically. Classes will be offered in the spring in the 3 modalities: virtual, hybrid, and in-person. This depends on the size and type of the class, the availability of the space, as well as the learning objectives of the class. So faculty are working now to determine the modalities of their course offerings for the spring. All students and families should have received an email this past week outlining all of their options and the deadlines. The email also contained really critical updates about the academic calendar for the spring. So please refer back to that if you have more detailed questions. Students who are currently on leave or studying remotely will have the option to enroll in person or remotely in the spring, or to take another personal leave. Students currently enrolled in person will also have the option to remain in person, opt to study remotely, or to take a leave. Students are being asked to complete their intent to enroll by October 30th. Course listings will be live in SIS beginning on November 2nd for students to explore what will be offered. Students will be required to meet with their advisors prior to course registration to discuss their plans. While students are expected to complete this initial intent prior to seeing the full course catalog, department websites will have spring course guides posted as soon as they're available. So students may not need to wait until November 2nd to see what types of classes are being offered and how. Students will also be able to adjust their plans up until the start of classes on February 1st. But please follow the timeline in that email to understand the financial consequences of changing your mind at different points throughout the next couple of months. There will be in-person and synchronous opportunities for students to take classes, as well as virtual and hybrid, which are both going to be offered synchronously and asynchronously. Faculty are going to be putting more detailed information into their course descriptions in SIS about the modalities and the timings of their courses. So please refer back to that as your student is starting to think about building their schedule. If in-person classes is a priority for your student, they are going to need to work with their advisor to identify the classes across the curriculum that are being offered in this modality. This may mean that your student is going to need to explore classes in new areas and new topics outside of their potential major or outside of things they feel like they have to take this spring. So it's going to require a little bit of creativity and thinking outside of the box for some students to find classes that meet the modality requirements that they want to have. But the opportunities do exist, and the advising staff can help your students find them. We learned a ton about remote learning since March. So faculty have had access to a tremendous amount of technical and pedagogical training on teaching in all of these modalities, and they're continuing to be supported as they create their spring classes. Some courses have been specifically designed for this unique new environment. So students are finding that there are some opportunities in classes that they wouldn't have been able to take during a normal semester. We are surveying students and faculty throughout the course of this fall to assess how it's going, and we're working to address issues around student workload, engagement, technology access as they're coming up. So regardless of how your student decides to spend their spring semester, their faculty advisors and all of the advising staff are available to help them weigh their options and feel comfortable in their decision.
Thank you so much. This next question is for Josh. It's really poignant about our kids' social and emotional health. Many parents are sharing student experiences of loneliness and isolation in the residential halls, exacerbated by the inability to prop doors open, for example, or visit rooms, and even know who is in your cohort because no one has told them. It seems this is a great area of concern for many, and that there should be concrete ways to assist those who are struggling out there. How has residential life worked to support students this fall in the midst of this new campus experience?
Yeah, and thanks again. This is a very important question all of the time, not just in COVID. I think it's important to highlight that, especially since I think you'd said 60% of the folks who are tuned in right now have first year students, especially for folks who this is your first your first kid in college. The idea of loneliness and isolation is actually not unique to just COVID, but obviously it's exacerbated by the pandemic and the environment that we find ourselves in as we're trying to create and keep a healthy and safe environment for your students on campus. So I recognize that, and it is really, really heart-wrenching to know that there are students who are experiencing loneliness and isolation, truly like many of us as faculty, staff, administrators, and others are feeling the same kind of loneliness in our lives as well. A couple of things that I've seen from my observations the last couple of months. First of all, we have 130 resident assistants who are undergraduate students who live in all the residence halls. This is the first year that we have all of our residential communities staffed by RAs, all of them, including our wood frame themed special interest houses, which is a huge, huge advantage for community building and development. We've increased the number of RAs in our first year communities to have lower resident to RA ratios so that there's less residents per RA. And with de-densification for COVID, we have less people in certain spaces anyway. All that being said, the RAs have been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal this year in working in very difficult circumstances to build strong community in a really difficult way. Just as a sense of scale, in the first 2 weeks of the semester, RAs had planned over 100 individual events or programs, not including floor meetings, which all of them would have had at least 2 floor meetings by that point. So they're doing a lot of programs and events. Now, just because they're holding programs doesn't mean students are taking advantage of them. So I think that's something that's important to recognize, that although students may be feeling isolation and loneliness, that might be because they're not engaging with the opportunities that are out there. We've received in my office many calls from parents about being concerned about their student. I welcome anybody to call our office in residential life, look on our website, speak to our professional staff who oversee the area. And if you have a concern about your student, please reach out and let us know. Let us know who your student is, and we will figure out what's going on and how to be subtle and not obvious in trying to figure out how we can make sure that they are staying connected. I will say that we've been getting a lot of phone calls from parents with generalized concerns and not really willing to share the name of their student. And it makes it difficult for us to be able to provide their student support, not knowing who their student is. So I would just encourage folks to reach out to us. We are here to help support your student. I am confident that we're doing a lot to engage folks in the community, but it is a difficult time we're living in. And if there are folks who are falling through the cracks, we want to know about it. We want to reach out and support.
Thank you. We want to be very respectful of the clock. We've had so many questions. We tried to group them into themes. We didn't get to all of them. We'll have time for one last question. If we don't get your question, reminder to please check down the FAQ page or to check with the people you've seen right here on the call. I know they'd be happy to get in touch with you. But our last question for the afternoon is to Chris. It is great to see that you support students throughout their journey, and you mentioned that they can meet with you, but how do they do that?
It's actually pretty straightforward, pretty simple. We have a tool called Handshake. Your students may have heard of it. And, you know, as a parent, one way that you can encourage your student to be part of the process is to come visit us. Also be supportive of them being, you know, exploring and kind of learning some different things. But the Handshake tool is awesome. It has all of our job postings, thousands of job postings each year. And in there, students can literally look at my calendar as well as all of my colleagues and get an up-to-the-minute moment where they can say, I want to meet with Chris for so at such a time. And Handshake is the tool. So direct them there and they'll be easy to get into our calendar.
Well, as Neil mentioned, we are running low on time. That was an excellent Q&A session, I must say. Thank you. It makes me want to go back to college, which was a really, really long time ago. But thanks for joining us this afternoon, all of you, and for engaging us with so much information.
I think we could be encouraged by how much concern you've seen by President Monaco's leadership and his entire team, that despite all the twists and turns and curveballs we're being thrown by this pandemic, there's a real spirit out there that we're going to rise and meet the challenges, and that Tufts will continue to be a light on the hill for students, faculty, and our communities.
And clearly, as parents, we've sent our kids into this world because we know the value of this kind of educational experience. And while this year is totally different than any other, Tufts continues to be the global leader in approaching challenges like these with rigorous scholarship and science, but also with a huge heart.
So on behalf of the Tufts Parents Giving Program, your official host for the event, and our family, we thank you for joining us today. We wish you best wishes to you and your families. Have a good afternoon.
If you're wondering what campus looks like this semester, it's really not all that different.
There is also a great excitement about being back on campus.
We still see groups of people around campus, a little further apart, talking and exchanging ideas and chatting and studying.
We are back on campus and are so fortunate to be able to be tested twice a week. We're practicing with the team 3 times a week, doing skill sessions. The girls are in small groups, but we're having a blast. We're really thankful.
We've done a really good job adapting as a community to still interact with one another, but in a way that's safe or online. I know a lot of clubs are kind of switching to more of a virtual platform, but still are trying to emphasize a sense of community and inclusion.
It's been a fantastic start to the year. The students have been super helpful about making sure they're following protocol and following and checking in on our new reservation system.
So far, I've been really impressed by everyone's ability to create a really strong community, even with the restrictions.
What's been great about this year is getting to train everyone on all of the COVID precautions and packaging of different materials to serve to the students quickly and efficiently.
I am looking forward to a very, very exciting, if somewhat different, year.
People are really finding ways to socialize and to do things they're used to doing. I have noticed that the Tufts community overall has a really positive mindset about what's happening this semester so far.
Through tough times, Jumbos always seem to stand tall. Go Jumbos.
Thank you for all that you do for Tufts, for entrusting us with your most prized possession, your Jumbo.